Welcome to another episode of Meet the Expert. Today I am proud to introduce Brad Tompkins, the CEO of VMUG. How are you, Brad?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
So yesterday I was having dinner with Brad, and I realized that I didn't know much what he used to do before he was the VMUG CEO. So in this series for B. Brown Bank, we basically meet a person, and the question that I love to start with is, how did you get into IT? And in your case, you know, it's a very wide-ranging question, I know, but give us like a good introduction into how you came into this world that finally led you here.
Absolutely. So actually, my degree was in information systems. So I'm one of the few that actually used the degree that I went to school for. Mm-hmm. So after school, I sold computers and networking to corporate accounts. So that was a lot of fun.
Right, out of school, you went into a vendor?
Right,
or
right
a reseller?
Yep. So this was a reseller in Columbia, South Carolina, Computer Sales and Services. Give a shout out to them. They're still out there chugging.
What were you selling down there?
Gosh, I remember, so the HP 4SI, man, we could not keep those things in stock. That big, huge networking printer, it was awesome. So a lot of HPs. Also, we had the state contract for NCR and digital. Okay. So NCR was microchannel. That was the big thing that NCR had. And then Digital Equipment Corporation, the tech colleges loved those machines. Yeah. And they were pretty pricey. Yeah. But man, those things were nice though. So sold a lot of NCRs, digitals, and HPs. And those LaserJet printers, they were just, you couldn't break those things. Okay. I actually have a 6L in my house still that still works. I had to get a parallel to USB and find some drivers, but I got that working. So I did that for a few years. Then I left that company and sold computer training. Okay. So this was a company called PC Genius in Columbia, South Carolina. They're out of business now, but that was kind of fun too. Did that for a year. That company was kind of going downhill at the time, so I bailed out of that.
Were you actually training?
I wasn't doing the training. I was selling the trainers, the training sessions. And we had classroom training, but we would also send a trainer on site if you wanted to. Okay. If you had enough.
This is no plural site with internet access video.
No, this is way before all of that. Okay. One of my customers was a company called Siebel's Bruce. So Siebel's was an insurance company back then, and the training business, you know, a lot of times training gets cut when budgets get tight. So I jumped ship. That was my first help desk job. So we had an AS400.
So you went from selling and selling and selling to actually doing help desk.
Yep, actually doing help desk.
Did you like the transition?
I did. It was fun to kind of get your hands dirty. You know, I'd been pretty close to all this stuff, but now actually doing it was kind of fun.
Did you actually have to call support and things like that? Then you'd be like, this thing doesn't work as advertised.
And so we had an AS400, so everything was done at the desk. I mean, you didn't have to go anywhere. You know, Pat talks about the pendulum swinging, so I've been on a few of those pendulum swings. And so that was a lot of fun. Let's see, I left there and then went to Time Warner Cable. Okay. And then Time Warner, while I was there, got bought by AOL. So I was involved in that whole AOL, Time Warner.
Big merger.
Yeah, big merger. And funny side story here. So they were putting AOL Instant Messenger on everybody's desk. And I'm like, this is a waste. This is a consumer app. This should not be an enterprise. Nobody's ever going to use instant message. I've got about 6 instant messages on this phone right now. I use it all the time, right? Yeah. So that's the foresight I had, or lack of foresight that I had. There I was a telecom manager. And did a lot of stuff there. Obviously, cable company, got a lot of phone calls, so it was constant tech support. But that was when the whole shift was going from, you know, tip and ring and telecom to IP. Okay. And I realized, you know what, I got to forget the old, get with the new, because we were running 2 separate networks at the time. I mean, you know, the data network and then the phone network.
Yeah, the phone network typically was not Cat5e. It was just, you know, phone punch-ins or something.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So the 110 blocks, 66 blocks, got all that down. And that's where I was involved with the Nortel Network User Association as well. Okay. So I've been involved in
Was that the first user group that you interacted heavily with?
Yes, I'll say that. And I was a local leader there. We got on the board. I became the president. So did all that kind of stuff. So that was a lot of fun.
So you saw the value in user groups back then.
Absolutely.
Because from what I know, user groups basically came from not having anywhere else to go, right? You had a big manual and you had a lot of questions, so user groups were born.
Yeah. And just, you know, the getting together in the community. That's where I learned the power of the community, because you really can figure anything out.
Yeah.
And now, boy, it'd be neat to go back to those days and have things like Twitter and everything else where communication is
it's
a lot
global,
more, it is
24/7. Yeah.
It is global. Back then, the meetings were so important because you could sit across from each other and do what we can do now over Twitter and the IM apps that I didn't think were going to go anywhere. So then, interesting enough, I did that for a while, and then Siebel's, I went back to Siebel's.
No, but hold on. You said you saw IP networks, and you said, yeah, I got to get in this. How did you get in? How did you make the transition? Because a lot of people in our industry have to make that transition every 3 to 5 years.
So while that was going on, I ended up going back to Siebel's because Siebel's had a director of technology services. And I said, okay, this would be a good switch. I would have the data center under me. I would have the telecom side under me. And they were going through that transition. They were rolling out IP phones and those kind of things. So I took that job because I knew that Time Warner was going to be a little bit longer.
When you started at Siebel, I'm just making sure I got it straight. You started in help desk.
Started in help desk.
Went
and I
out,
left as a telecom
came back
manager.
as a director?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I was at Time Warner for about 2 or 3 years, so I learned a lot there, and I always stayed in touch with the Siebel's folks. So, you know, you get friends with everybody, and
relationships.
The Y2K I was at Siebel's during Y2K, so when you spend the night in the data center with somebody, you kind of get to know.
Director of Data Center Services in Y2K, you were a busy guy.
Yeah. So that's when the transition happened to me. So I was Director of Technology Services, and that's where I got introduced to VMware. So I remember my first vMotion, which, you know, I've told this story before, but we're all sitting around a computer, and Steve Lee was sitting there. He was the guy 10 times smarter than me. He's like, all right, watch this. So we're on the screen, and he's pinging our Exchange server, and I'm like, we're doing this with our Exchange server? Are you nuts?
Are you nuts? In the middle of the day?
In the middle of the day, exactly. And he's like, trust me, it'll work. It's VMware. And I'm like, all right. So we watched that.
I love that statement.
And that ping never dropped. And I'm like, wait, what? I mean, I'm getting chills now. Like, what just happened? And so then he typed in or whatever. It's like, we went from this host to this host. I'm like, mind blown, right?
What year was this?
Golly, what year was that? So that was
like,
probably...
Was it like 4.1 or 5.0?
Oh, I'll have to ask Steve what version that was.
Because I remember...
that was probably around 2010, 2011.
So yeah, around that time. I think 5.0 came out around 2011.
Yeah. And we used SRM, we used Recover Point Appliance, and the Siebel's at that point was transitioning away from an insurance-only company to a company that did services for the insurance industry. Okay. So long story there, side story, but they were shifting away from AS400 only, obviously into the Windows world. So that's what we were replicating some different stuff with AS400, but the Windows world was all VMware, and man, it worked great. And
so SRM in that day, I mean, 5.0 days were good times for SRM. That's probably the time when there was no other competitor. Tell me about, you were responsible for availability.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure the promise of SRM was very enticing to you. Did it actually work out? Was it something that you guys actually tested? Do you have like a DR and stuff?
Yes, yeah. So we actually tested. The biggest headache back then was IPs. Okay. So you couldn't, the IP addresses, you'd have to re-IP. So what we would do is we had a DR center in Winston-Salem. Okay. Data center was in Columbia. So we would cut the replication and in a bubble stand up the DR in Winston-Salem. And then we would tell all our testers, because we'd run a full cycle, you can't go to, Siebels.com or whatever, you have to go to this IP address. Yeah. And they would do that, and they would, type in and process insurance claims and process payments, do all that kind of stuff.
So you were failing the whole place. Okay, so you're an expert on basically DR and availability and BCDR.
Yeah, and it was awesome. I mean, it was complicated, but it worked. And I was like, this is what we can do. So in a real disaster, back then RPO, RTOs, were a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, we could still process business. And as we started getting customers, because again, we were starting to service the IT industry, I would tell that story and say, this is how we do this.
A lot of companies, even today, don't get their DR plans tested and validated.
That's right. Yeah. And we would test them once a year. And I remember, telling people that. And then some people, like our vendor, was like, hey, can you speak and tell your story? And I'm like, sure. And I would, how many people in the room have a DR plan? And half the room raise their hand. How many people have tested? And almost all the hands would go down. I'm like, look, if you don't test it, you don't have a plan. Mm-hmm. I mean, end of story. Yeah. And then there was a tragedy that happened in Graniteville, South Carolina, where it was a train wreck and chlorine spilled and people lost their lives. It was really bad. But from an IT perspective, they didn't have a DR plan, and the guy went around afterwards and spoke. He said, you know, if you need money for DR, have a disaster. And he was kind of saying a little tongue-in-cheek, but what was unfortunate is that company ended up not making it, and they had to shut down. A lot of people lost their jobs. But you know, you can't.
Yeah, it's not.
You know, it's an insurance
it's a priority.
policy. But if you don't have it when you have the disaster, it's too late. You can't go back and do it.
Yeah.
And even a big company like that one wasn't able to do it.
You mentioned you were out speaking about it.
Yep.
VMUGs?
That was not at VMUGs. That was at a couple of local events in South Carolina that I did in Columbia.
So when did you hear about VMUG for the first time?
So I joined in 2011. Yep, and I had a lot of staff that went to the local VMUG. John Davis was the big VMUG leader there in South Carolina. He's still involved with VMUG as well. That's how I met Pedro Acosta. I think you know Pedro. So that was a lot of fun. That was good times. And then my final stop before this one was a company called Medion, and they're still in business. In fact, they have data centers here now. They acquired a company here in Cincinnati. But I ran the Asheville data center, and that data center was mainly marketed as your DR data center. And again, with my background, you know, that kind of worked out. So I was a general manager there. What was fun about that is it was the infrastructure. It was and I'm talking about, you know, air conditioned, security, you know,
data center business, air conditioned power, the
generators, all that kind of stuff. Because we did co-location, but they were also part of the VCAN, which of course is now the VCPP.
Okay.
And that's a great company there. In fact, I was DMing with Frank Mobley, the CEO, the other day. Brad Alexander's their CTO, I believe, and he gets featured on VMware, you know, sessions and things like that.
It's very cool. When you get into inside the data center business, it's a big brotherhood, I will call, because everybody's trying to get bigger, but in the end, it's the same people that have this expertise, right, moving around.
That's right.
So that's pretty cool. So what made you? This was a very successful career, may I say? Probably very profitable, very good positions. What made you move into VMUG CEO?
So the opportunity came, and a friend of mine reached out and said, hey, you ought to think about this. And I mentioned the Nortel Network user group. I was involved with 2 or 3 other groups in Columbia, smaller local ones, but I'm like, wow, I really have, you know, my career has really taken off because of the community. And whether that's the VMUG community or the Nortel community or fill in the blank, the IT community in general. And with the opportunity to represent such a great brand as VMUG, I was like, yes, I definitely want to pursue this. So I pursued it pretty heavily, and fortunately it worked out. And 3 years later, here I am, and it's an honor to be able to represent VMUG and to stand up and open up user cons and do all the different things that I get to do. So it's a lot of fun, keeps me on my toes. I still try to learn, still try to attend sessions and go to the VM Worlds and those kind of things. So it's great. I mean, it's work in there too, but all in all, I can't complain.
What would you say are the things that you are proudest of your tenure as CEO? Things that you know I was involved in this, and I think that really worked out well for our users in this and that.
So I'll answer that a couple of ways. I think as the user cons have evolved and as we continue to evolve, and we got some big changes coming for 2019, so stay tuned for that. Okay. But I think listening to our members, I said earlier today, our members are telling us that professional development is really big. So Ben Clayton, our president, he's like, let's do this professional development seminar. And this was not IT, but it was about how, do you evolve your career? We've got a professional development panel coming up here today. And to see people really take advantage of that is neat. And to hear the feedback from the members and then turn that into action and then see, okay, we had X amount of people. Like those webinars are some of the most widely attended webinars that we've had. And even after the fact, the downloads that we see, because of course we can track all that. So we're like, okay, we know we hit a home run. Yeah. And then the second piece is seeing people, and it's kind of piggyback on that, take advantage of that, and their career takes off. Yes. So, take you for example.
That was
you started, with the VMUGs, and you know your IT. So then people, they'll step up and they'll become a leader. So then they're adding those soft skills around that. Maybe it's public speaking. Maybe it's how do you present yourself? How do you speak to different levels? Speaking to a technical CIO is different than speaking to a non-technical CEO. And so you hone those skills, and the next thing you know, you get more valuable and you elevate your professional brand. And either you excel in your own company, and people have gotten promoted within their own company, or you get picked up by a partner, or the mothership comes calling, and you pick up the phone, and next thing you know, you're a TAM, and you're moving to our cities.
So here's something that I will say, and we were talking about this yesterday. I really think that the VMUG leaders are one of the most important gateways into like going from I'm just a guy that got told that I have to do VMware from now on into oh my God, I really like VMware. I want to get more, and I know how to get more, and I now know that this community exists. And you know, VMUG leaders are normally the guys that are telling someone, listen, there's all this, but you could also make a Twitter account and you can interact with people directly. You can talk to VCDXs or authors, and ultimately, I think that the VMUG leader role is so important to VMware's overall success, right?
No question.
No question about it.
It's one of the main things.
So with your experience, I would ask, what do you think makes or what are the traits that successful leaders always show?
You know, I think the first thing is just stand up and do it. Just raise your hand and become a leader. I think get out of your comfort zone. For a lot of us, we might be introverts, but get out of your comfort zone. You know, do the public speaking, get in front of a crowd, start with a small crowd and it grows into bigger crowds, or maybe it doesn't, but do that. And think about your personal brand. Think about what you're doing for yourself, and that sounds self-serving, but it's really not, because as you build your personal brand, people start viewing you, okay, well, this is a thought leader, this is somebody I can reach out to, and then you can help somebody, and then maybe they can help somebody else, and it just kind of expands and continues to grow. Also, when you're thinking about...
So that first part, I'm hearing embrace it. Like, if you're going to be a leader, just dive into it. And make sure you understand that you're a public persona now. Yeah, okay.
Yep, that's right. And you're representing yourself, your company, but also VMUG. So dive into it, embrace it, and you know, feet first. The other thing I'll say is ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask the question. We've all been there before, or if we haven't, we'll go through that journey together. And there's no sense in recreating the wheel. If you want somebody, hey, can you review this deck? I'm getting ready to do this. Or hey, can we do a Zoom here real quick and let me practice my own stage presence? You know, some people get up and wing it. Some people practice. I'm a practicer. I mean, I was on stage for what, 3 minutes? I probably practiced that 10 times. That's just me. I got to do that, right? I'm going through it in my head over and over again. So, you know, do whatever you have to do to make it as professional as you can, because it's going to benefit you, and then you can then help benefit the rest of the community, and it just builds momentum and it takes off exponentially.
I have to agree. And going back to what you said about asking for help, one of the things that I see new leaders shy about is that they don't understand how to work with vendors. And it's very important what you said in the first one. If you create that public persona, if people know who you are, if people, when they say that city, they immediately think of the leaders, right? They don't have to ask who the leaders are because they're out there in the community. It just helps a lot. It just helps a lot both ways. For you when you reach out, and for vendors to find you. So that's one thing I always see new leaders struggle, is how to get sponsors and stuff like that.
Yeah, we do hear that, and it's important to note, you know, VMUG is for end users, it's for partners, and it's for VMware. It takes all of us. We're all part of this community. So you got to reach out to the partners and the vendors and have those conversations with them. And yes, they're there to make connections and ultimately make sales, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because they have solutions that you know, our members need. I mean, people that are doing things, IT is changing so fast, and so many new features are coming out. You know, Amy was talking about all the new things that VMware talked about from VMworld last month. And you know, everything continues to evolve, so you can't stay still, and you need these vendors as well as VMware to learn what's next and where you're going to take your company.
And especially having that quarterly meeting really gives you a barometer on what everybody else is doing. And as a leader, you can also tell what's hot, because you can get varied attendance if you go like from one topic to the other. Like, you'll get completely new people if you're talking about containers, for example. And this is our job. Our job as VMUG and VMUG leaders is also to help people make the transitions, right? So it's really, really cool. I love VMUG. I've said it several times. And I do think leaders are a very, very important part of the ecosystem. All right, so this is amazing. I didn't know a lot about you. I know more now.
Yeah.
Can you give us one last statement for the camera, or for everybody out there that may see the video?
I would just encourage everyone, if you're not a VMUG member, go sign up, vmug.com, and click on join. Membership is free. Get engaged in the community, whether that's online or in person. I would encourage you to do both if you can. It's a fantastic community, and we are here to help you maximize your investment in your VMware and partner solutions. And again, VMUG is for partners, it's for end users, it's for VMware. So go sign up, go be a member, and go get engaged.
I like it. Well, thank you very much, Brad.
Thank you, Errol. Appreciate it.